And so without further ado, I will hand over to Francesca. Francesca was a primary teacher since 2005. And she led in maths and science while she did that. I hope you don't mind me introducing you like this, Francesca.
No.
She's been an author for the past couple of years with us at Learning by Questions, and she's been writing primary maths and primary science content. And today she's going to be talking to us a little bit about mastering mental maths with LbQ. So I shall hand over to you now, Francesca.
Thank you. Thanks very much. First of all, I must apologise for I have very noisy fans on my computer, and so if there's a background swishing sound, I apologise and hope that it won't detract from your concentration. So I'm just going to share my screen to start off with. Has that gone through okay? Yeah, great. Okay. So we're looking at mastering mental maths. The national curriculum mentions mental calculation for each year group in Key Stage 2, but unlike the written methods, there's very little guidance on what's expected in terms of strategies to be taught and to be mastered. So we are going to look today at some of those strategies that are required for successful mental calculation. So we know that obviously with the change in focus on the Year 6 SATs papers to a new arithmetic paper, where speed is ever more essential, and accuracy obviously also, but an area that is sometimes overlooked in the consideration of mental maths as a preparation for written methods is that it does have a really valuable purpose in its own right. It develops the children's understanding of the number system, relationships between operations, enables them to spot patterns and make decisions about the way that they want to tackle a question. So in terms of speed, obviously there's the familiar rapid recall elements of mental maths, where children need to know basic facts such as their number bonds, multiplication facts, and related division facts at their fingertips, but also they need to have a range of strategies to approach. Now, there are so many different names for the ways that mental calculations are performed. These are some of the terms that we have used in our question set. So we look at partitioning, compensation, otherwise known as rounding and adjusting, near doubles, counting on and back, and obviously using known facts and applying them. So to become fast and fluent, the children need both of those things. They need that rapid recall, but they also need to have those strategies at their fingertips. To achieve effective and efficient mental arithmetic competency, it's all about practice, lots of practice and variation. So they can try different methods, find out which ones work in which circumstances, see things presented in different ways. So coming briefly to where we go with LbQ. So LbQ has a series of question sets which are to support the mastery of these range of strategies and to improve the fluency. So we start off with our mastery question sets, which I know that some of you are new users, so I'll just spend a little bit of time explaining that our mastery question sets come in 4 levels. The first level is an understanding level, where in this context, the different strategies are explained with usually quite strong pictorial support, and then move on to a fluency level where they get more practice at being independent in their calculation, and then moving in through reading and problem solving to broaden the application and deepen the understanding of these elements. So that's common to all our question sets. If I just have a quick look at some of those question sets. So this is now looking at LbQ. This is a question set. It's Year 5, add and subtract numbers mentally. So it's covering a range of a range of areas. So this is what's called our preview screen. You can go in and preview the question, so you can see the image that the children presented with. That's the actual question at the top. What is 25 plus 13 plus 75? And obviously in this case, we're directing the children to look for number bonds to 100, to rearrange the calculation so that it makes it very simple when they've recognised that 25, 75 becomes 100. So if they get the answer wrong, they're given the feedback which points them to that most efficient way of solving the calculation. And they get confirmation with their feedback too. So that's a quick example of that. So we've got a subtraction example here. This is the illustration. This is where we would encourage the children to count back. It's subtracting 50. It's literally counting back in tens using a number line that's provided for them in this case. And we also pick up misconceptions. This red 378 here is picking up the misconception where they've counted in the wrong direction. So if they get it wrong with that misconception, they're nudged in the right direction towards the right answer. Here we've got a strategy of partitioning the number for adding. So you can see a nice clear illustration to show how to do it, which hopefully prompts them to do it for the first time. But should they then stumble, then they get directed with some feedback telling them to partition the second number and spelling it out a little bit more for them. So in this question set, we're touching on a range of the different strategies. There are separate question sets for adding mentally and subtracting mentally, which allow a little bit more detail, but this is sort of an overview I thought was useful today. So one of the areas that is particularly useful, so something that we refer to as compensation, people use it different ways, but here where it's quite hard to explain sometimes the concept of adding 65 and then taking off 2 instead of adding 63. Whereas there's a nice number line here, which we can encourage the children to follow suit, draw their own number lines. Another of those challenges of mental maths where students in particular feel they have to complete everything in their heads, whereas of course, simple jottings and short notation of memory of figures rather than holding them in their head is perfectly allowable in mental calculation. So here is another example where we're using near doubles, so it's compensation again, but here we're compensating by rounding to 300, doubling the 300, and then adjusting the adding 1 here and the taking 2 here. So the children can see why they need to take 1 off their answer of 600. So that's an understanding level. If I quickly go to one of the young groups, year 3, where they're practicing, I was going to look at multiplication here. So this is quite a nice illustration of how the questions can build up. So here's an example of year 3, where they don't touch on as many strategies, for instance, as they do later on. So here they're starting with a basic support for remembering that 2 times table fact. Then they're extending that knowledge to working out, if I know 2 times 2, I can work out 20 times 2. And they're supported through the process to start looking at numbers such as 24. Well, I can split that, I can partition it into 20 and 4. And I know how to times 20 by 2. I already know how to times 4 by 2, so I can step through that ultimately to find the solution to the question. So once they know how to do 2 times, then they can use their doubling knowledge to work out 4 times and also 8 times. So that's another example of how they are supported through that understanding level. And then moving through, if you can see here, to ultimately working completely independently, where there's no pictorial support, they work out for themselves what the best method of that is going to be. But should they struggle, they have feedback, which addresses common misconceptions, but also if they haven't a clue where to start, it gives them a starting point for getting the right answer. In the fluency level, we also look at some simple word problems, mainly one-step word problems, where they have to just think a little bit about what calculation is that they need to do and which parts the numbers play in that calculation. So that's that then moves on to the reasoning section, where they're looking for identifying mistakes that other children have made, and explaining their answers and having a modelled answer for them, so that if they haven't understood what problem was with that calculation, they can pick that up. Perhaps that's a mistake that they've already made. So they have 5 reasoning questions there, and then onto the harder word problems, mainly word problems, which tend to be several steps, but still using those mental methods. So that's a whistle-stop tour of a couple of mastery approaches for the mental maths questions. We also have practice question sets, which offer, there are so many of these, a wealth of material for children to practice and become confident in use. So for those of you who can't see, who aren't familiar with this, I've just put in a search term of practice in my home screen, so that I can just pull out the practice question sets. Here is a practice 3 times tables question set. So this is a good example of, it's a 2-level question set. So in level 1, they get pictorial support, which they are likely to be familiar with and learn their times tables. And in level 2, they have to answer them independently. They still get the feedback if they've got the answer wrong, reminding them of those strategies for calculating those particular times tables. These are organised in the year group in which they come in the national curriculum. So in year 3, practice 3 times table, and then all the later ones in year 4, obviously, where they come up to finish off practicing those. And so we also have the timetables division facts. So this is all reinforcing that rapid recall, fingertip knowledge of those tables. We have also some of practice question sets which are based on these earlier year ones, but perhaps in the later years we put them in contexts that children in years 5 and 6, for instance, will come across. So, for instance, practice times table division with problem solving. The first 2 levels are exactly the same for children who, even in year 5 and 6, aren't confident in their 12 times table. They can go through those same stages through to the fluency. And then they have another couple of levels, an extended fluency, where they're looking for missing numbers using the 12 times tables, applying the 12 times tables beyond that basic knowledge, and so on, and then into some problem solving, which is using larger numbers as appropriate for years 5 and 6, but still based on that core 12 times table knowledge. Another area that we touch on is inevitably the statutory tests come up. So in mental maths in particular, that focuses in year 4 on the multiplication table practice. So if I just put in the multiple tables check, we can see we have a series of question sets that are designed to help children practice for those tests. These are presented in exactly the format, or exact as we can, the format that they will see on the real test that they sit. It's the one area where there is no feedback, because we want the children to progress as fast as they can through, so that they can get that speed element, and you can time them and so on to improve that. There's 5 sets of them, so there's a variety they can do, and they're in a random order. So each time it's run, it will run in a different order, so children don't get familiar. They can do the same question set several times without becoming overly familiar with the content. So, so there's practice sets in all sorts of different ways. I'm just going to put this back to practice, and this is just within multiplication and division. You can see there's lots and lots of practice question sets of these. And then again, in addition and subtraction, we've got the different types of mental addition and subtraction, so using number bonds and so on, using compensation. You can see here that they can get a load of practice with image support, and also moving on to doing those independently. So that gives you a bit of an overview of how we put these things together, and give you an idea of what LbQ has got to offer in Key Stage 2 mental arithmetic. So I'll pass you back to Helen now, see if there's any questions that anybody has.
Thanks very much, Francesca. That was fantastic. Hopefully everybody found that very enlightening, as I did. There's a question that I had, not necessarily from now, but that I've been asked a few times from teachers. Does the feedback direct pupils towards one particular method, would you say?
Okay, so no, yes and no. So in the practice question sets where you are, I'll just share my screen again on here. On the practice question sets where you are looking to practice a particular skill, then, so for instance here where we're looking at it, can you see that? Is that shared?
Oh, you're not presented again. If you try and present again.
There we go.
That's it.
So here, the question set is about practicing adding mentally using compensation. So if I just click on this particular question, obviously children can do mental calculations however they want, and as long as they get the right answer, that's perfect. But if they get the wrong answer, then this area here gives them the incorrect feedback that they will get, and it nudges them in the direction of compensation, because that's what we're practicing here. But so and that would be the most efficient method for completing that calculation. So there's no requirement that they do it that way, but they will be nudged. So if we're doing a general question set on, so if we're using the mastery one, for instance, on multiplying numbers mentally, then the feedback will direct them to whatever the appropriate most efficient method to answer that is. That's not to say there isn't another method which they might prefer to use and can use, but obviously we've nudged them in the direction of what would be an appropriate way to answer that question. Does that answer?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Francesca. Does anybody have any questions directly relating to what Francesca's just presented?
I didn't have any on the chat, but I do have a request, just a general LbQ request, which I said we could answer.
Yeah, that's fine. So if there's nothing that anybody wants to ask Francesca about mental maths, what we could do is just do a very quick demo, if that would be useful for those people that have joined. I know that Sharon that has asked a question about the pupils. Was it Alison?
It was Alison. Alison just wanted to know how pupils join. So I said you do just a very quick, this is how you get pupils on the system. And obviously, if you have any questions, Alison, feel free to unmic yourself, because Helen's going to do a quick demo for you now. So unmute yourself if you have any questions, and she'll answer them.
Excellent. Okay, that's great.
And Sharon said yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so Martin, if you want to stay for this, that's fine. If you don't, then that's also fine. But I shall just present my screen and do a really quick demo on how you actually use learning by questions. Okay. So when you log in, I think you've all got accounts, trial accounts at the moment. When you log in, you should get your My LbQ screen, as you can see here. You've got all your subjects down the left-hand side here. So obviously we've got English, maths, primary science, and then your secondary sciences, biology, chemistry, physics. And so if you first off want to sort of search for something, I'll click on maths because we've been looking at maths today. And then you'll get through to this screen that you saw Francesca showing earlier. You've got your list of topics down the left-hand side here. And so you can either just filter out, so I know I want to look for fractions, for example, and then it will come up with a list of subtopics, and I can maybe filter out the years that I want to look at. So all the question sets answer national curriculum objectives. So we'll have at least one question set that covers each national curriculum objective, if not more, usually more. And so you can just select the year that you're interested in. I'll just say I'm interested in year 5. In fact, I'll go for year 3. I'll go for something a bit more, bit easier so that I can understand it. You can hide your results there, your excluded results. So it'll just give you all the year 3 fractions question sets. Another way you can look is you can just pop something in the keyword search there. So you saw Francesca doing that earlier. She put practice in there, and that would bring up all the practice question sets, or you could just put adding fractions or something like that. That would work just as well. So I will have a look at recognise equivalent fractions. That one sounds like something that we're looking at. And then you'll see a little preview here on the right-hand side. So you can see the question in the images, just like Francesca showed you there. So in order for me to start that for my pupils, all I need to do is press start. It's just exactly as it sounds. You can also plan it into your calendar. So if you see there, click plan. If I've looked through and I've found all the question sets I want to run on particular days, all I need to do is click the plus. And now that's in my Wednesday, it's in for Wednesday. And I'll show you in a moment where to find that in your calendar in my LbQ. But if I want to just start it from where it is, I click start. And then you'll see it pops up and asks me to set the end time for my lesson. It will default to about an hour, but you can make that to the end of the day. You can set that all the way up to 5 to midnight, should you wish, on the day. And you can only set it for that one day. So you can only start it on the day you want to run it, and you can only run it for that one day. It will always end before midnight. So I'm going to click OK. Asks me to set a task label. So it could be that I'm going to set different groups, different tasks. So I might want to set this task for my blue group. So I've selected that, and then you can see that the start button appears when I do that. So I'm going to click start. And then what happens is I get a 3-digit code. And this is the code that I need to send to my pupils. So if my pupils aren't on site, I can send this code by whatever method I can. So I can use Google Classrooms if that's what you're using, or Microsoft Teams, or whatever it is that you're using at your school. Or obviously, if they're in the classroom, they can enter that code. And so what they need to do is they need to go to www.lbq.org/task. So actually, I could ask you now to go to lbq.org/task. So if you just pop off the tab that you're on now, click open another tab on your computer if that's what you're on, and go to lbq.org/task. And then you can pop in the code GFN, and then you will see that you will get the choice of question sets to answer, and you click on that and start answering the question. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to go to www.lbq.org/task. Okay. I can't remember what the code was because I've got a memory of goldfish. GFN. GFN. It asks me my name. Oops. And click go. And then you can see I've got a choice of 3. So you can start up to 3 question sets at one time. I've just set off 1 at the moment. So I've got recognise equivalent fractions, which I'll press. And then you can see here, this is what the pupil sees. I've just asked you, haven't I, to go on another tab, so you won't be able to see that. But you should be able to see it. Anybody that's still remaining on the shared tab, you can see how to answer questions. So answer the questions, click answer. You'll either get incorrect feedback if you got that incorrect. You can retry and try again and answer the question. So if you just answer a couple, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what the teacher sees. Let's have a look who I've got here. Excellent, everybody's on, so it looks like you've worked that out, so that's good. Fantastic. So actually, if you could try and get a few wrong, Alison, because everybody else has absolutely thundered through this at a rate of knots. But then you'll just get to see that incorrect feedback, and you'll see how that is constructive and helps to address misconceptions that the pupil might be having. Great. Gillian and Dave are getting some wrong as well. Thank you. Okay, so we've got quite a few people who've gone up to the fluency section now. That's fantastic. Okay. So, I've done something very naughty. I apologise. I've paused you. If you want to just pop back to the tab where you can see my screen. Everybody managed to do that? Just hang on a second while you get back. Okay. That's great. So you'll see on my screen, I can anonymise or unanonymise. Is that a word? I'm not sure. I can anonymise or not anonymise my pupils. So if you've got this within school, you can have that anonymised. I can unanonymise you if I want to see who you are. And I've paused you. You can see at the top right of this tab, I've got a little pause icon here. So I can pause you and unpause you. So that helps to concentrate the pupils. I would say before we had the pause button, we couldn't stop them and they just carried on. So if you wanted to do some more teaching, it was quite impossible to do that. So you can see here where I've got a little green dot, that means you've got that correct first time. Well done, Martin. You've absolutely stormed through there. And then you can see you've got a bit of a gap here. And that's because we set our progress as a default to 7 out of 10 for the understanding and the fluency levels. And that's because if pupils are having no problem, like Martin and Sharon, we want them to not get bored. We're not asking them these questions. It's unnecessary. We know that they know this level. So we're moving them on to keep them, to kind of increase the difficulty for them and increase the depth of knowledge there that they need to draw on. So in the fluency section as well, that will happen. And then they have to answer all the reasoning and the problem solving questions in these maths question sets, mastery question sets. Where we've got an amber square, that means that they've eventually got that correct. So Gillian at the top here on question 4, she's had 4 goes and she's got that right after the 4th attempt. So it's turned amber and I can see 4 in there. Where it's red, that means it's still incorrect. So on question 15 here, Gillian's had 3 goes and she's still not getting that. So that could be something that you need to look out for in terms of where you need to direct your interventions. Very briefly, what you can do in the classroom is you can do a whole class intervention. So as I've paused you here, what you can do is you can click on a certain question and you can view the question. But first of all, I'm going to review the responses. I've picked the one that not many's answered there. And I can reveal the answers so you can see what individuals are answering. You can see where they might have misconceptions. I can reveal what the most common wrong answers are here, see who's giving them, that kind of things. Lots and lots of things that you can do with this, but you just have a play around, you can't break it. But what I can also do is I can either do it from here, so I can click this symbol here, or on this screen, I can view the question and I can do a little bit more teaching. I can annotate the diagram. How many parts of the rectangle do you need to shade to show 3/4? I'll just delete what I've just done because I've ruined it. So if we divide this into 4 pieces, excuse my drawing with my mouse, it's not very accurate. If these are my quarters, how many parts would be 3/4? So now I've given you a bit more information. I can press play. And you should see, if you go back to your tab with the /task tab that you were just answering the questions on, you should see that I've sent you out another question. And if you have a go at answering that again, just wait for these to come in. I can see that my teaching wasn't very good because a few of you still got that wrong. I'll just wait. Oh, I'm not going to answer it. So, okay, so if you come back to my screen again, I'll just give you a few seconds to click back on the tab where you can see my screen. So as a teacher, you can see here where people have answered that question. Gillian, Dave, Daryl and Alison have that still incorrect. I can expand and have a little look at what they've written. A really nice thing that you can do is you can expand those answers and talk through them. You can annotate them with the class. You can do that kind of thing. Okay. Okay, I'm conscious that I'm giving you a lot of information here. And perhaps it's a little bit too much too soon for those of you who've not seen it before. But that's quite an important thing to know how to do. So when I come back out of here, I'm back to my main screen and you can see the results there. Okay, so